Alright, in this video, this is going to be part one of a mini-series on creating an Unsplash gallery for your custom live wallpaper. Now before we dive into this, if you have been checking out my custom tutorials for quite some time and have not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. I've been making custom tutorials for 5 years now, and I would like to think that I'm still fairly active with making these tutorials. Now this particular preset here, we are using Unsplash, tons of free images, very high quality. These aces that you see over here are actually getting pulled from the experimental topic over at unsplash.com. And we have these topics over here across the top, and if I scroll over, we have experimental right there. And these are the images that are getting pulled. As you can see, we do have that one right there. And if I click on that image there to open it up, you can see that our custom live wallpaper is pretty much right on par with the quality of the image from Unsplash. As a matter of fact, as we dive deeper into this series, you can set your own resolution for your custom live wallpaper background, as well as these thumbnails that we have here. These thumbnails are a lower resolution, which speeds up the process of pulling these images. So if I select this first one right here, and actually, let me come over here and close this out. And let's look at the first image that we have in the experimental section. Closing down my menu here. The thumbnail that we had in the menu is a lot smaller in resolution as compared to our actual background that we have here. Now, what are you going to learn or refresh your memory on in this series? We're going to do some URL pattern matching using the WebGet function. We're going to do some regex to cut out certain pieces of the URL. And later on in the series, we will be using the SI module index to get the thumbnails to show up. Now all this will come with us using a list global, several text globals, and then we'll have an on-off switch to animate our menu on and off the screen. Now I will say this is version 4. Now I'm going to build this with you from scratch, and I'm just going to hang on to this one for right now, but I'll upload each piece of this series to my free wallpapers folder. There's a few more things I want to do with this one before fully releasing it. Now, why is this version 4? Versions 1, 2, and 3, I tried it various ways, and in my thoughts, in my mind, it was easier on the coding, but I ran into issues with the thumbnails loading. I thought I could get by with only using a few globals and using the module index a lot more, but it actually turns out as I would change topics. Let me show you what I'm talking about. As I would actually change topics here, we have experimental, we have wallpapers, and we have textures and patterns. Now notice whatever one we're on, it will load that up, and we can change these very quickly. Now it may take a little while for new wallpapers to load in the background, but notice as I go through these, they're changing fast, and that's because of these thumbnails. Not only that, I have individual globals for each topic, and that's where things can get a little bit messy with your globals, but as you can see, as I'm changing the topic, these thumbnails are changing perfectly with it. Now that might not make much sense, but as we go through and look at these globals, hopefully what I'm saying there will become a little bit clearer. So let's build this together from scratch. You'll learn a lot as we go through this, and with a blank preset, let's head over to globals and let's go ahead and start adding the globals that we'll need. The first one we're going to use is a list global, and for this list global, I'm going to call it topic. And let me go ahead and enable my visor keyboard so we don't have to see that keyboard there. Now for the options, these are going to be the topics that you want to pick from the unsplash.com website. Now we have these topics across here, but I want you to pay attention to the URL. We have unsplash.com/t/experimental. You want to use whatever word that is right there for your topic. So I'm going to go ahead and do experimental, all lowercase. Put a comma. Let's pick another topic. How about business and work? Now notice business and work, it actually has business with a hyphen and then work. So make sure you type that topic in like that in your list global. I'm just going to copy and paste that. Now you can technically pick as many as you want, but it's going to multiply the number of globals that you're going to have to use. Now I know some of you advanced custom users, you're probably thinking, oh, we shouldn't have to create more globals for the thumbnails, for the wallpapers and stuff like that. I tried and it was not working as well as this technique here. I'm just going to add one more. Let's do current events. And again, I'm just pointing out to you, make sure you copy that topic in. In this case, we have a hyphen again as well. So I have my comma over here in my list global, and I'm going to paste that. So we have 3 topics. And something else to go ahead and tell you here is that we have 3 items in this list global. And when we go to index this in a moment, this has an index of 0, this has an index of 1, and this has an index of 2. A lot of times in coding, the first item has an index of 0. So think of it as 0, 1, 2, even though we have 3 topics. Now, another website we will be using a little bit later is going to be the source.unsplash.com. And then we have this /random where we're going to actually be putting in an ID of an image into here. And if you notice here, we can actually specify the resolution that we want to use. This is going to be good for making small thumbnails and a large wallpaper. Very important. But the reason why I'm pointing that out to you right now, I'm just going to add a text global. We're actually going to do 2 of them. We're going to do one called T size. This will be our thumbnail size, and this is going to be a text global. And let's go ahead and add a W size as well. This will be our wallpaper size. These will definitely be different, and this will speed up the thumbnails for loading. But then when you're ready to apply that wallpaper, we can actually use a higher resolution image. And that's where this URL is going to come into play. So again, this is a text global for the wallpaper size. And I'll tell you what we'll go ahead and do for the thumbnail size, let's do a 120 by 120. Those are going to be the small thumbnail squares. And for the wallpaper size, let's try 3000 by 3000. Now we can always come back in here and change these later, and you don't necessarily have to make them square either. But maybe later on in the series, when we actually get these images loading up, I'll come in here and change these resolutions, and you can see how it definitely changes the wallpaper or the thumbnails. So checking on that. Now let's go ahead and add a few more text globals here. Another one is going to be num. This is going to be helpful when we start tapping on the thumbnails to apply them to our wallpaper. But for now, it's just a basic text global. Pressing OK on that, and for now, we don't even have to put anything in here. Don't even worry about it. We will actually be activating the num global or changing it when we touch the thumbnails. All right, we need another text global. This is called which. And what is this going to do? Well, when we are cycling through our various topics, since I picked 3 topics, which ultimately is either going to be 0, 1, or 2. And if you recall, a few moments ago, I was talking about the indexes here, 0, 1, and 2. Again, we won't use that in this video yet, but we will be using it when we create the overlap groups and stack groups for the gallery. Now, here comes the globals for each individual topic. Let's just focus on one topic right now. And again, by topics, we're going to focus on experimental. So I'm going to head back over to unsplash.com. I'm going to go over to experimental, and we're going to start looking at these images. If I click on this burning rose here, we have unsplash.com/photos, and then we have this thing right here. This is the ID. And this ID is unique to this image. Let me close out of that. Let's come to this dark one right here. It has its own unique ID. And these IDs that we have, this is what we're interested in. We want to grab these IDs. Now the workflow is going to be this. We're going to be grabbing the IDs from unsplash.com/photos, and we're actually going to shoot this ID into this URL where we can then specify the size that we want to get. Sounds pretty crazy, but that's why I'm doing a series here. There's a lot going on, but it works quite nicely. I hope you saw that at the beginning of the video. Okay, now time for a little bit of coding with some of these globals. And the first one we're going to do here, we're going to call it URL 0. So this is going to be the URL for our 0 topic. In this case, it was experimental. It's that first topic that I have in that list global. And I just realized I made that a color global. No big deal. Little tip here if you didn't know this. I do it all the time. But URL 0, if I change that to a text right there, it will override that color global. All right, so here we go. A little bit of coding here for URL 0. Not much, but here we go. So the first little part of the URL, it's really no different than what you see here. I went ahead and put the HTTPS in there. I have found sometimes where using that has been beneficial, but regardless, notice we have unsplash.com/t/. So very similar to what we have up here. Unsplash.com/t/ and experimental. Now, we do not want to manually type in experimental here because if you ever wanted to change your topic, you'd have to come back here and change this in your code. So here's what we're going to do here. We're going to refer to that GV topic. And since this is URL 0, I want it to look at GV topic 0. And how we do that, we have GV topic, don't close it up yet, put a comma, put a 0, close it up, and then put your dollar symbol. Notice we have experimental. Now to show you how this will change dynamically, I'm going to check on this. I'm going to come back up to the topic that we're referring to, and let's actually edit this. I'm going to edit this. I'm going to put the experimental at the end, and I'm going to let the business work be first. So swapping that out, putting a comma here, and let's do experimental on the end. Now, if I press OK and we come down to URL 0, check out what we have now, because business work is the first item in our GV topic. Now, since we're talking about URL 0, suppose we did have URL 1, URL 2 for these other topics. Well, check out what you can do. You're going to duplicate this code, and if I change this to GV topic 1, we have current events. That was the second item in that list global. And if I go to topic 2, that's where we moved experimental to. But since this is URL 0, I want to refer back to the GV topic 0. Checking on that. So not too much coding there, but I can't say the same about this next one we're getting ready to do. So let's do ID 0. I mentioned earlier that we are interested in IDs of these images. For example, this burning rose again, we're interested in grabbing that ID there. So for ID 0, it's going to be a text global. And the code's going to be crazy. I'm going to break this up bit by bit for you so that you can follow along with how we're going to get the IDs. So let's go into that text. Let me close this image down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this web page here, and I'm going to go to View Page Source. And I'm going to search this page for unsplash.com. And notice I've already done this in the past, but it says unsplash.com/photos. And it shows up a lot inside of this page here. But if I zoom in on one of these that we have shown here, it says I'm on number 2 of 112. Don't worry about that. But what I want you to notice is that we have the unsplash.com/photos, and boom, there's our ID. Now this is probably not the same ID we just saw a moment ago, but that's no big deal. We're going to cut these IDs out. And a way that we can do that with Kustom is to do some pattern matching. So for this text global, for ID 0, let's go to the webGet function. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we have these ways of extracting URLs. And this is using URL pattern matching. So here we go. We're going to do a webGet, parentheses, and let's type in the URL, not this URL, but the URL 0. Remember, URL 0, let's refer back to that. I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to do GV URL 0. And what we're doing is we're going to look at this URL. I tell you what, I'm going to close down that page source. I'm going to go to business and work since that's my URL 0. I'm going to view page source. And this is the source code for that business and work. Now we can tell our webGet to actually look at this URL. So we're going to do GV URL 0, comma, and to do pattern matching, after we put in that web address, you notice the 500px down here? We have to put a comma, URL, comma. So I'm just going to put URL, comma. And now the next part of the code is what we want to match, that pattern matching we have in here. And I'm going to put this inside of some quotes. And basically what we want to put here, I'm just going to go ahead and paste it in, but we want that HTTPS, the unsplash.com/photos/. And for now, I'm just going to get a count. So I'm going to put comma, count, close it up, dollar symbol. Now, right now it says 0, but I guarantee you there's more than 0 matches on this thing. All right, so now it shows 50, and if yours shows 0, here's a quick fix to actually get that to sync up. I'm just going to apply this, and let's go into the items real quick. Let's go to plus, let's go to text, and for this text, let's just have it show that global ID 0. Let me delete this time that we have here. And something about, actually applying this to your wallpaper, it actually forces KLWP to really look at that WebGet function that we have built so far. So if you check on this, more than likely you are going to see 50. Now, there are technically more than 50 over here at this website. If I search for that exact same URL that we were matching with, it says there are 64 up here. It's fine. I don't think you want to pull 50 thumbnails or 64 thumbnails either. We're going to pull about 10 or 15 or something like that. Now, I'm okay with this actually staying up here. We're going to build some of this stuff so we can actually test it out and see what's going on as well. So let's head back over to globals. Hopefully that is working for you now. Just add that text item, put that global into that text item, and this is kind of forcing KLWP to look at that URL and determine the number, the count of those pattern matchings. Now, to be honest with you though, I don't really care about how many there are. And I'm going to go ahead and take away this URL from the beginning. But I just wanted to show you how that pattern matching works. But what we actually want to do, I'm going to come back to the business work. And underneath business work, I'm just going to look at this very first one. And a way that we can access that, the first pattern match is going to be 0. So notice we do get a URL returned to us. And not only that, look, we have an ID. 0 is the first image, and if you look, it matches that ID perfect. Let's close out of this one. Let's go to the second one. Now sometimes these will get a little bit out of order because you can see how the images are not all the same size and all that, but I'm pretty sure this will be the second one. We have an ID there, and that will be an index of 1 for the second one. And notice we do have the exact same ID. Now later on, we're going to come in here and use a different code for this because we don't want to manually type in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, though you absolutely definitely could. As a matter of fact, I used to do that years ago, but we're going to use module index, the SI module index later on. But for now, I'm just going to keep that at a 0, and I'm going to go back to this first image. So we have the ID there. It's the same ID that we have here, and now we want to pull that ID out. Remember, we're not accessing this actual image from this URL. We're going to use this URL later on. And again, we're going to use that so that we can change the resolution. Very helpful there. But anyway, back to this image. Let's focus on pulling this ID out of the URL. Now, how do we do that? We're going to use a little bit of regex. So text converter TC reg, put a comma. And actually I lied. I want to keep this up here just for a minute so that we can actually refer back to it. I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to press enter and I'm going to paste. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just going to leave this one alone so I can kind of show you what we're doing. And then we're going to do the regex on this second one. So down here, let's do TC reg with a comma. And at the end here, assuming you're somewhat familiar with regex, basically what I want to do is I want to select all of this stuff up until photos with that slash, and I don't want to use it. Then we're going to do a capture group on this ID. I have videos on all of this. Search my channel for capture group if you want a little bit slower tutorial, but we're pretty much going to do that. So we're going to select all of this stuff, we're going to capture this ID, and then we're going to select all this other junk after it. And by us using a capture group, we can pull this out of that URL. So at the end of this code, we're ready to do our regex, and we're going to search, and we'll put this in quotes, dot asterisk. I like to call that a star oftentimes. But basically, this is going to search for any character, and this right here is going to say, hey, you can search for any number of that character, any character, period. So it's going to search for all of these, but I want it to stop when it gets to photos with a slash. And I tell you what, I'm going to come outside of that quote and I'm going to say, hey, replace that with nothing. And I'm going to close that up. So here's what's happened. It's looked for any character any number of times all the way up to photos with a slash. And notice all of that stuff is gone because we replaced it with nothing. We are now at the spot where we want to get our ID. So I'm going to go back into this first part here. A set of parentheses will allow us to create a capture group. And again, bear in mind, we're trying to capture all of this stuff, all of these characters, right up until that next slash. Now, to my knowledge, we will not have a slash anywhere in the ID because that would confuse the URL, I believe. So here's how we can do that. We can do .star. And then I'm going to go outside of that parentheses and I'm going to put another slash. Look at what happened. Now it's returning download force equals true. We don't want any of this stuff and we're getting ready to get rid of that. Now I'm going to play it safe here too. I'm going to actually come back in here and put a question mark just in case later on down the road this URL has another slash somewhere. Notice this is the last slash in the URL. But if there was another one and we did not have this question mark, it would actually take everything up until the last slash. This is referred to as being greedy versus not greedy in your regex. But notice, I mean, here, right now, if I take it away or even add it, it's not changing what we see there. I'm just going to put the question mark there to play it safe. Now, how do we get rid of this other stuff? Well, we're at the slash, which is here, and then we just want to get rid of everything else. So I'm going to do .star, and now we have nothing getting returned. Because technically we've matched the entire URL with this regex code. But since we have a capture group, we can return that group by coming here, because we said, hey, earlier we're replacing it with nothing, but if we do $1, it's going to return that capture group. That's the only capture group, but that $1 refers to the first capture group. And check out what we got. We have the ID. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do for now, I'm going to delete that URL up front so that we have just this ID. Now, pretty much this code is done. However, there's one thing we want to be careful with here is this 0. Now, that 0 is referring to the first image on this page, which is the one that we have here. Let's come to this one right here with the hands and the clay. More than likely, this is going to be the third image, which should have an index of 2. Let's check that. VBX, and yes, sir. Check it out. Pretty cool, huh? So later on in this series, we're going to come back and change this to where we can dynamically have this number change for us. We don't have to manually type those in. But let me just come back to 0 for right now. That's that first one we have here. And I'm going to say that this code is 75% complete. We will come back and revisit that in part 2. And remember earlier we had this thing here. I told you if we couldn't see the 50, the number of URL pattern matchings, we can see that ID right there as well. It's good to have this stuff up here when you're building things for testing purposes. But anyway, on to the next global. And that next global is going to be a thumbnail. So we're going to do thumb 0. Thumbnail for the 0 topic group. This is going to be a text global. Let's press OK on that. And now we're ready to grab our thumbnail. Now let me show you what this is going to look like. I'm going to take that ID, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to come over here to this other URL where we have the word random. I'm going to paste that into there. And let's go ahead and put another slash and let's do maybe 100 by 100. This is going to be a super small image. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste that into a new web page and load it up. And check it out. It's a small image of that same image. Pretty cool, huh? If I come back up here to that URL and I change this, instead of it being 100 by 100, I'll do 1000 by 1000. It's going to be the exact same image, but it is bigger. This is awesome. You can specify the exact size that you want for your images. The thumbnail, we want it to be small. But the actual wallpaper, when we apply it to the wallpaper, we want to use something rather large. Now, how do we do that inside of Kustom? Well, pretty much what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back to this URL, I'm going to copy it, go into thumb 0, and I'm going to paste it. And we need to change a few things. Obviously, we're going to be getting different IDs. And since this is thumb 0, let's use the global variable ID 0. Close that up, dollar symbol. Now, later on, when we go back in here and we're dynamically changing these IDs, it'll have a different ID for each thumbnail. And then also recall we did have a size where we could specify our thumbnail size. So I just deleted that 100 by 100 and I'm going to go to T size. So we set 120 by 120. I think that's the size of my actual squares that I made in my gallery. But of course you can go back and easily change that later on. Checking on that. Now you're probably going to be mad at me because I've had this over here as my little cheat sheet all along. But basically we are right here in our globals. You can see that we actually have a ID 0 for our wall and we have a wall 0 that we're going to have to make as well. Now these codes would be pretty much meaningless to us right now until we actually create the gallery. So we do have even more globals to make. Yes, I know, I told you it was a lot. And then down here, the on-off switch, that's just going to allow us to animate that gallery on and off like you saw. And as we go through the rest of this series, I'm going to have a test thing. And basically that's going to be like where this text global stuff is up here. We're going to have a couple of things showing to see how these things dynamically change as we go and we tap on various thumbnails and apply those thumbnails to our custom live wallpaper. But for now, I think we're at a good stopping point. When we pick up in part 2, we will actually start building our gallery. And I think probably in part 2 or maybe part 3, we'll get around to looking and talking about why we need these other 2 globals that I haven't talked about yet. But yeah, that's a long one. We're a third of the way there. And again, if you like what you see here, if you've tuned into my custom tutorials, please subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, leave a comment below. And that's it for this video. I hope it helped.